Well, most of the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates are in New Hampshire today to speak at the state's Democratic Party convention. The crucial early state is second to vote in the nomination contest. And in the state's most recent poll, which was taken in early August, former Vice President Joe Biden has a 21.4% of the vote. That's actually ahead of Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And that poll also shows 20% of primary voters in New Hampshire are still undecided. CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns is at the New Hampshire Democratic Party convention in Manchester. So I'm curious, what are you hearing, Caitlin? Is Biden really the lead candidate, or are most folks still really unsure?
Right, we're here at the Democratic convention for the state of New Hampshire. A lot of activists, volunteers, state and local lawmakers, all here to meet the 19 candidates who are here in the state today. It is a fluid race. There are a lot of voters that we were talking to that are still making up their minds, but a lot of them mentioned those top three candidates: Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren. Biden is trying to appeal to some more moderate voters here. About 40% of voters in New Hampshire are undeclared, so they can participate in either primary. He's trying to get them to participate for him in the Democratic primary. Bernie Sanders won here in 2016 and is hoping to build upon that support. And Elizabeth Warren, of course, who comes from neighboring New Hampshire, has spent the most time of all the candidates here in New Hampshire. She's hoping her affinity for retail campaigning, those selfie lines, meeting people face to face, really pays off here.
And what really is the significance of this event? I know everyone's gathered around here. Why is it so important?
Well, New Hampshire is the first in the nation primary state. They take that duty very seriously, and this gives them a chance to not only hear from all the candidates. Each candidate is giving about a 10-minute speech to the audience here. We're in a stadium right now. It's a chance for delegates, for lawmakers, for activists, volunteers to meet these candidates and to help them garner support. Endorsements are very important here in New Hampshire because it's a small state that prizes retail campaigning. So the more endorsements you can rack up here, that is very helpful for their campaign. So a lot of the candidates are kind of focusing on that today.
And you had a chance to speak to Senator Cory Booker and ask him about the state of his campaign. I want to play for you what he had to say.
The reality is we are actually positioned just like every other other president from our party that's ever gone on to win. We're pretty much positioned where they were. Remember, we haven't had a president in your or my lifetime that's from our party, from the Democratic Party, that's gone on to be president that was ahead in the polls this far out. Most of them are considered long shots at this far out, whether it's Barack Obama all the way back to Jimmy Carter. And so we know what the matters actually is what you're doing on the ground in those early primary states.
So, Caitlin, what is he doing on the ground in New Hampshire?
Well, he is right that sometimes New Hampshire is a place for underdogs to succeed. Why? Because it's a small state. It's easy to get around. People attend town halls. They like to meet these candidates face to face. And so a lot of people will come to New Hampshire who are lower down in the polls or don't really stand that big of a shot winning the nomination, come to New Hampshire and try to focus their campaigns here. So that's the point that he was trying to make. We have the debate coming up next week, and several candidates are hoping that can help them, give them a little bit of a push in this race. But we are also starting to see at the same time kind of tiers develop in this race. Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders kind of consistently polling towards the top. But other campaigns are trying to expand their organizations. Pete Buttigieg, for example, opened a lot of different offices here in New Hampshire and is trying to focus on the organizational aspect. The big question I have is whether voters here want to go with their head or their heart. Sometimes voters in New Hampshire don't always pick the nominee. We'll see if that changes this time around.
And what are the issues that they're most concerned about in New Hampshire?
A couple of different things we've been hearing from voters. The top issue that I've been hearing from Democrats, at least, is the issue of climate change. That's a huge issue here, as it is nationally. The other thing to note is that the economy is actually doing pretty well in New Hampshire, which could be a challenge for some Democratic candidates. So they're kind of focusing on tailoring their economic messages here, saying that the economy may not be working for everyone. Also, the issue of education, health care, we hear over and over and over again, access to it, the affordability. So those are kind of some of the main issues. But I will say, specific to New Hampshire, the issue of opiates. This was a big issue in 2016, continues to remain a crisis. Lots of candidates who have campaigned here have unleashed plans to address this issue.
We know also, Caitlin, that President Trump has said he's going to strongly target New Hampshire. He only lost the state in 2016 by something like 2,700 votes. Are Democrats concerned about the influence that he might have in the state?
Yes, it was such a close race, and there's going to be a competitive Senate race here next year as well. So that's what Democrats are focusing on up and down the ballot. They want to make sure that New Hampshire remains in the blue column. They know that that's a challenge, especially what I mentioned about the economy. So you're hearing a lot of the candidates here talk about trade policy that could affect voters here, and they are talking a lot about the president's promises that he made in places like New Hampshire that they say have not panned out. So we'll see, but certainly Democrats here are conscious that this is a big battleground state beyond this Democratic primary.
Caitlin Huey-Burns in New Hampshire. Caitlin, thank you.